Thank you for joining us once again on our Future of Journalism Education in Southern Africa conference. It's a hybrid conference. Yesterday, we started off in Namibia, Windhoek, and today we are in Bulawayo. Tomorrow, we'll be in Lilongwe, Malawi. This conference is brought to you by Namibia Media Trust, together with MISA Malawi, the Media Institute of Southern Africa, Malawi, as well as CITE Center for Innovation and Technology and DW Academy. And the theme of the conference is Empowering African AI, Enhancing Journalism Excellence in a Digital Era. So when we went for break, there was one more question for Zenzele Ndebele. I think we'll ask that question and then we move on to our next speaker. Zenzele, there's a question for you here. Someone says, hi Zenzele, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned that you intend to be 90% automated in a few years' time. How will that affect the human workforce?
I don't think AI in the side of the world is going to really affect the workforce, but it is going to complement the work that we do. I'll give a short example. Before elections, I think we were reaching about, like I said, about 6 million people a week, because we were producing a lot of content in different platforms, and that was working quite well. Then we got the election and it didn't go the way other people wanted it to go. So we had a serious drop from the 6 million that we were getting. I think the week after the elections, we were as low as 300,000 because people were still angry and protesting. But they're slowly coming back, having lost their interest in politics completely. So we are now doing a lot of community issues, community stories, and these community issues come mainly from our audience on WhatsApp, on Twitter, who tell us stories. This is what is happening in our community. Can you talk about this? And it is the workforce, it is the reporters who go out and look for those stories. We published a daily newsletter on the stories that happen, and it is the reporters and the work that is people that are here at CITE who compile those stories, write the stories. So reporters are always going to be there. The workforce is going to be there, complementing the work that is being done by AI. Because like I indicated, AI is still, I think we're still far, not even many years from a time when AI will go out and present stories. But you can feed information to AI and it compresses it and it writes it more faster. We're still going to need camera people to go out and shoot functions, and then we come back, we use AI to edit. So they will be there. They will get more time to do community issues, do in-depth investigation, interact more with people. But I think when it comes to content distribution and how content is packaged, this is where we think AI is going to play a very critical role.
Well, thank you, Zenzele, for responding to that question. Now that we have an understanding of the challenges of the media in Zimbabwe and the challenges that journalists and CITE encountered with the introduction of CITE and the progress that has been made so far, I would like to invite Professor Mphathisi Ndlovu, an associate professor of journalism and media studies at the National University of Science and Technology, Zimbabwe, to talk about the impact of Alice, CITE AI's presenter. Remember to follow AI CITE ZW, that is on X or Twitter. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you for this opportunity that I've been given to share my insights on Alice. So I'm going to give a presentation of a research which I carried out a few months ago or last month. I'm going to talk about the reception or the perceptions of audiences on Alice. I think Zenzele has given a good presentation that is contextualized how Alice is being used, is being integrated into the newsroom here at CITE. So my research is going to look at how people are, or how audiences or how citizens are actually engaging with Alice, or in terms of their perceptions of Alice. So the title of my presentation, which is based on a research which I carried out, is Alice in the Newsroom. audience perceptions of CITE's AI-driven news presenter. So this is what I'm going to talk about. I think one of the key issues about journalism really has been the debate on whether journalism, is it a science or is it an art? The proponents of journalism as an art, they argue that journalism is more about storytelling. And my interest really is on how artificial intelligence or AI is being integrated in a way that enhances the idea of storytelling within the newsrooms. What we need to understand about our newsrooms is that they are increasingly adopting and utilizing digital technologies as part of news gathering, production, and dissemination processes. I think this is what we have been talking about, that news organizations, they are now utilizing digital tools in terms of news, in terms of disseminating news, and also in terms of gathering news, whether you're talking about social media platforms, TikTok, Twitter, all these digital tools, they're actually playing a pivotal role in shaping the whole idea of journalism in the 21st century. One of the key issues now is how do we use these innovative ways to actually tell our stories and also engage with audiences. The issue of engaged journalism is actually pertinent in the 21st century, and news organizations, they are using various ways of actually, innovative ways of actually telling stories. And one of these ways is actually the issue of incorporating artificial intelligence tools in order to produce and distribute news content efficiently. There's some research that has been carried out on the impact of AI in newsrooms. However, most of this research is focused predominantly on the global north. The research has been looking at different countries in the Western world. How are these countries, how are newsrooms in these countries actually utilizing artificial intelligence? So there is little information of how newsrooms in Africa are actually utilizing AI tools. And as this has been argued by one of the key scholars in Africa, Ogola, who argues that most African newsrooms are actually yet to fully utilize AI. So while there is research on the adoption of AI in African newsroom, this little research which I was talking about, that has been done by scholars such as Munoiriarwa, Chiwumbu, Ogola, Kotori, Kuikashi, Moyo, Mare, and Matsilele. There is little knowledge on AI-powered news anchors such as Alice. Most of research has been done on AI, but it hasn't really focused on news anchors, AI-driven news anchors, like what we are talking about today on Alice. So that is where my research is actually interested, that we have got studies that have been done on artificial intelligence, but not the artificial intelligence that is focusing on news anchors. Artificial intelligence tools, they are diverse. AI news anchors is a component of the diverse nature of AI in its entirety. So my interest is on Alice, like as I have explained, that I'm interested in CITE's AI-powered news anchor, how Alice, I'm interested in how audiences are actually, how they're actually receiving this innovative way of storytelling. What are their views? What are their perceptions on Alice? I think Zenzele was mentioning some of those aspects in bits and pieces, but the research is actually provides more detailed information on how people actually reacted to Alice, whether we're looking at social media platforms, how are they commenting on Alice on Twitter? Like when Alice is actually, when there's actually videos, AI-driven news videos on Twitter or on Facebook, what were people's responses? And also in terms of interviews, like talking to different people from different areas, in terms of their views on AI-driven news anchor, which is actually different from the traditional news anchors, in terms of what are their perceptions? Do they think that AI news anchors, they are actually playing a key role? Do they think they are actually enhancing journalism, or they prefer the traditional news anchors, such as Ruben Barwe, as Zenzele gave an example earlier on. So this research is actually probing some of those particular issues, and it's very important to understand how audiences perceive ALIS, because those insights can help news organizations to actually implement AI-driven activities that are in sync with the expectations of the audiences. So in terms of AI tools, as I have explained, that AI tools are actually transforming the news industry. Terms such as automated journalism, algorithm journalism, computational journalism tend to be used interchangeably to describe the use of algorithms to complete tasks that can be conducted by humans. So in essence, when we're talking about AI, we're interested in how machines are actually performing human-like tasks, how these machines are actually performing tasks that ordinarily can be performed by humans. For instance, when we're looking at ALIS, when ALIS is presenting news, traditionally that task is supposed to be performed by a human being, but now we have got a machine that is presenting news. So that is the idea of AI-driven news anchors. But besides AI-driven news anchors, we have got other ways in which AI tools are being used in the newsrooms, such as analyzing data from various sources, producing news, tracking breaking or viral stories, adding data visualizations, facilitating user engagement, transcribing interviews. There are some of these tools which are able to transcribe interviews. Like imagine you're a journalist, you go and interview someone, the interview is done for like maybe 30 minutes to 1 hour. Now there are certain tools that can be used to make our job easier by transcribing such interview, because to transcribe an interview is not an easy task. Actually, to be listening to someone speaking for like 45 minutes and you are writing notes but now we have got these tools that can be used, not just transcribing interview, but also for fact checking. So in terms of news anchors across the globe, because we want to situate ALIS, ALIS is not just the only news anchor in the world. There are other news anchors across the globe. According to some research, there is an argument that the first AI news anchor came into being in 2018 in China through a state-run Xinhua news agency. That was the first one which actually came up with an AI-driven news anchor. And from 2018, we have got other AI-powered news presenters, which include Sana and Lisa, India. These ones are from India, Sana and Lisa. Then we have got Snezhia. It's difficult to pronounce this word. It's Russian. This one is from Russia. And then we have got Feta from Kuwait, and then Nadira from Indonesia. I think I think in line with the question that was posed by I think it's Professor Guy Baker on the naming, right? I think most of these names they seem feminine, right? Lisa, the name of a news anchor. There's Lisa, Nadira, and Feta. Feta, yes, I've seen the images of Feta. It's a female presenter. So most of these presenters really they are female. So just to explain that, it's actually probably CITE is actually following the norm, the trend, where most of these AI-driven news anchors they are feminine. But in terms of also research also explains that there are a lot of challenges that are associated with AI, and which include the spreading of disinformation. I think is one of the key challenges that most of the researchers talk about, that when we're talking about AI, there's the dangers. There are dangers of misinformation and disinformation. And they also talk about the cultural biases in programming, that most of these innovations, they were crafted within the global north context. So sometimes it's difficult for them to situate them within our own African context or global south context. And other challenges that some of these researchers mention is they include lack of skilled personnel within newsroom, and also the issues of resources. within newsroom, that some of these newsrooms in Africa, they are not utilizing AI because of lack of resources. So it's not easy to actually use all these because you need resources. So in terms of AI, in terms of Alice, just a brief background in terms of the rise of Alice. Alice is CITE's AI-generated news reader, which was launched in, if I'm not mistaken, it's on 7 May 2023. The name was suggested, I think, by one of CITE's followers on Twitter. There was a question which was asked by the CITE's team in terms of the name that they would prefer. I think people suggested their names. I think from that list, the name Alice was selected from the names that were suggested on social media. In terms of the work of Alice, I think Zenzele has explained most of these issues, so let me not talk much about it. That is presenting programs such as Meet Your Candidate and then the brief news bulletin. So Alice has got a Twitter handle, AI CITE ZW. So the content on Alice is also shared on CITE's main Twitter handle, which has got close to 50,000 followers, if I'm not mistaken. And then in terms of the news, this AI-generated news is also shared on CITE's Instagram and also TikTok accounts. So in terms of my research, I was actually looking at how people who are following CITE's accounts, they're actually engaging with Alice in those platforms, and which also include Facebook. So when I'm now describing the methodology that I used, like as I've said, this is more of a qualitative study because I'm interested in people's views. The audience's views on Alice. What are their views on Alice? How are they engaging with Alice? So Alice, there is AI-driven content on Alice, presented by Alice on these social media platforms. So what are people saying? How are people responding to this content? So I used the interviews. I selected different groups of people, close to 50 participants, and I was using interviews. I was also using focus groups, asking them questions about their views on Alice, like are they engaging with this content on Alice, and what are their views on Alice? I was using some of these participants. I was interviewing them via various WhatsApp groups. I will join a particular WhatsApp group and then share my questions, and then they will respond to these questions. So, and then also I was analyzing tweets. People were tweeting about Alice. What were they saying about Alice? And also the comments on Facebook and also Instagram, TikTok. So in terms of my findings, what are audiences saying about Alice? What are people saying about Alice really? From my research, there is clear that there are mixed feelings on Alice. We've got two groups. On the one hand, we've got people who are actually applauding CITE for the innovative and creative way of storytelling. They are saying what CITE has done is marvelous, is beautiful. This is wonderful. This is progress. They're actually saying nice things about CITE through their work on Alice. That's on one hand. On the other hand, we have got people who are concerned about Alice, and they raise different concerns about Alice, and these concerns include poor pronunciation, lack of human touch, lack of emotions, issues to do with credibility, and also the implications on the news media sector. So this is what they are saying. So I'm just going to list and explain this in more detail. So the first issue from my study is that we have got people whom I will say they were oblivious, oblivious audiences in terms of, because they thought that Alice was human, yeah, like from the social media platforms. So when Alice is actually presenting this information, presenting news, some of the reactions on social media will demonstrate that there is a misconception of Alice as a real person. So there was an assumption that that Alice is a real person. Maybe it's because of the era we are in now, this postmodern era where people are not able to distinguish between what is real and what is a creation. So what we have got were some comments, but from these comments you could actually tell that some people were not knowledgeable that Alice was an AI tool. But I think Zenzele explained some of these issues that some people were asking Alice out for coffee, for lunch. Maybe some people were proposing. So that will indicate that people were not knowledgeable. So it's one of the concern, because when people are not able to distinguish between what is real in court and what is not real in court, it becomes problematic in terms of news consumption. The other issue when we're looking at Alice is to do with the impact really is on journalism curricula, because issues of, there's always this debate about how to integrate journalism schools and the industry. And one of the key issues from my research was that some of the lecturers were now integrating Alice within their curriculum. They were now using Alice as examples when they are teaching all these modules about online journalism. So I spoke with colleagues within the local journalism schools, and some of them, they were indicating that Alice has become, they've started using Alice, and they're actually thinking of using more illustrations of Alice when they are talking about all these issues about AI. And then in terms of other impacts, I think through Alice, the CITE team received a number of invitations to actually participate in various symposia, which I was also able to attend some of those spaces where they were presenting Alice. I think Alice, in a way, has become, it's not just a Zimbabwean phenomenon, but there are all this curiosity. There's some curiosity even outside Zimbabwe. And some of these questions were coming from news reporters outside Zimbabwe, such as Rwanda, where they were asking CITE's team to explain more about their work on Alice. So as I have explained, that there is also optimism surrounding Alice, where some people are celebrating that the future is here. I think this was one of the thoughts when people were happy that newsrooms should create more opportunities around AI tools to enhance journalism practice. So they were commending CITE for moving with technologies, and some were actually applauding CITE for the good initiative and creativity in leveraging AI to distribute news. So we have got all these people who were optimistic about Alice, who were celebrating the work that was being done by Alice. But on the other hand, we have got some people who were concerned about, who were raising a number of concerns about Alice. And one of those concerns was that Alice lacked the human touch. People are concerned about the human touch, that when Alice is presenting, there is no human touch, or there is no element, that human element, and it becomes difficult for audiences to actually connect with the news and the newsreader. So the issue that was coming out was that citizens or audiences should be able to connect with the news and also connect with the newsreader. But now with Alice, they were not able to connect because of that Alice was lacking the human command. Alice was lacking the human expressions. And as a result, some of the participants that I spoke with, they were adamant that they prefer real people instead of AI news presenters, that they would want news to be read by real people. So while he's acknowledging that Alice is quite an innovation, another participant stated that he prefers to watch a real person presenting news. The other issue is to do with voice emotionality. This is what was explained by, there's a research that was done in Denmark, where they were saying that audiences in Denmark argue that the voice of an AI news presenter sometimes it tends to be unnatural and alienating. So this is what was also reflected even when through my interviews with some participants, where they were saying that the voice of Alice is different from a human voice, and as a result, they are not able to connect with Alice because they become alienated through the issue of the voice. So it's about the human touch, it's about the voice, and they are saying that is different from a human, and as a result, they are not able to connect with Alice. And then the other issue which Zenzele explained is the politics of pronunciation. I think Zenzele explained in detail some of these issues in terms of that it is AI machines, they lack the cultural sensitivity that is evident in the failure of AI, in the failure of Alice to actually pronounce specific names. And the common one from the comment was Ngube, that there were concerns that Alice could not pronounce Ngube. Like when Alice is presenting news on news brief or meet your candidate. So if someone has got a surname by a Ngube surname, so Alice will actually struggle to say Ngube and will say maybe Kube or something. So that became a challenge, a problem. So from the comments, there was some level of annoyance, if I may put it like annoyance and disappointment that Alice could not pronounce surnames, proper surnames especially from Matabeleland. But I realized that some of these issues, when we are talking about the integration of digital tools, we need to understand the context. So you need to understand the context of Matabeleland, that issues of language in Matabeleland has always been very vibrant. So people become sensitive when certain names or surnames are mispronounced. So that was, in a way, that was reflected on Alice. So it's not something that is unique to Alice, but is also unique in other spaces. I think there have been complaints about surnames misspelled and names misspelled even in other spaces, especially from names from Matabeleland. So some of those reactions, negative reactions, were informed by Alice's failure to pronounce this surname. So some people will react in a very negative way due to that issue. The other concern was on credibility, because when we're talking about news, issues of credibility, issues of authenticity, believability, they are actually pertinent. So whenever someone is producing news, the audiences should be able to believe what you are producing. So the issue of appropriateness of Alice in terms of the news that was being produced, it was actually it was actually evoking a wide range of debates, and the participants were asserting that Alice does not give the listener an assurance that it is real news. Sometimes people want assurance, so they were saying that they were not assured. So when they are watching Alice AI-driven news, they are not assured that it's real news. So for them, they are saying that this is different, it's not real. So the idea of reality, that we want real news, and some of their comments were that it became difficult. When even Alice was introducing herself as an AI-driven news reader, some people felt that it's not real, it's different from the news that is being read by other traditional journalists. Then the other issue, this is actually a hot topic, is Alice a threat to the news sector in terms of jobs? That became a real issue even on those spaces, the discourses, the debates on Alice. So some people were saying that Alice is taking away our jobs. They were worried that journalists, with the unemployment rate and issues that what was going to happen was that journalists are going to lose their job. And someone was saying that you are not hiring our kids. Why now you are giving jobs to Alice? So all these issues were quite pertinent. So there are a lot of issues that need to be unpacked about how Alice can be integrated into the newsrooms, given that some people are worried about losing their jobs. So the key issue, one of the key questions is, are AI tools like Alice freeing journalists from their routine tasks? I think Zenzele mentioned some of the issues that even in their newsroom, they don't have a lot of journalists. So sometimes it becomes difficult to carry out all these tasks. So in that context, is Alice actually freeing the journalists to actually focus on other areas so that especially within this context where newsrooms they've got a fewer journalists. But now the counter argument is that AI tools such as Alice are actually threatening the jobs of journalists. So in other ways, there are concerns that robots or AI tools, while some people are saying that all these AI tools are freeing up journalists, others are saying that these AI tools are going to replace journalists. So there is a whole debate which is actually taking place in some of these spaces. So some of these questions underpin some of the reactions to Alice. On the one hand, some participants felt that AI news presenters such as Alice will have implications on, I will say this in Ndebele, imisebenzi yethu. That is the term they will use, that this will have implications on imisebenzi yethu, our jobs. That is going to have implications on our job. While on the other hand, some participants noted that Alice makes an economic sense as news rooms are hard pressed by uncertain financial times. So in some spaces, especially if you, instead of hiring maybe 20 journalists, you can have 10, but now it depends. Maybe the CITE teams can actually tell us which one is cheaper to have Alice, to have AI presenters, or actually to have traditional journalists. Which one makes economic sense? Because some of these issues are more of assumptions. So participants argue that journalists should always remain central in the journalistic process that includes AI tools such as Alice. So this is what they are saying, that even if we have got Alice, the role of a journalist should always be central. A journalist should not be, should always determine even the story, the framing of the story, rather than the AI tools actually determining everything that is actually happening. As I think I'm left with one slide. Some of us are lecturers, we talk a lot, so please forgive us. We talk and talk and talk. This is the last slide. So in terms of the future of journalism, so some were reflecting on the future of journalism actually in relation to AI tools. So as CITE is actually embracing AI tools, and more specifically news anchors, because AI tools are being embraced by even other newsrooms. But as CITE is actually embracing AI news anchors, what does it mean for the future of journalism? What does it mean for the future of people who are training to become news presenters? What does it mean for journalists, for journalism? So one of the responses to those who are critiquing Alice on Twitter is actually captures the attitude of audiences. Some people were saying that while there are all these concerns about Alice, politics of pronunciation, lacking human touch, human emotions, but in this Ndebele, they were saying that yiko konoko okukona for now. This is what we have for now. So they were saying, while we acknowledge all these concerns, but we need to understand that for now, this is what we have. And for now, this is what we can work in. Because with technologies, they always evolve, right? While there are all these challenges, but with digital transformation, in due course, I believe that some of these issues can be resolved. So while there are all these human expectations on Alice, CITE at the moment is actually using the available resources that they have to produce AI-driven news. So in terms of recommendations, I think it's very, very important. This is the last slide. So in terms of recommendations, it's very, very important for all these engagements to actually take place, especially which would include journalism educators, those who are actually training journalists, because when they are training journalists and they are not taking AI into consideration, but the journalists that they are training are going to be working in newsrooms where AI are being utilized, I think it becomes problematic. So there is a need for engagement, which include all these key stakeholders, such as journalism educators, data scientists, those who are actually involved in the technical aspects of AI news content, and also journalism schools and practicing journalists, because as Zenzele explained, some of the resistance are actually coming from practicing journalists, because sometimes there is always resistance when people do not have honest conversations about such issues. So there is a need for honest conversations, for engagement within newsrooms, and so that even journalists can actually share their fears, share their hopes and their thoughts, and through such engagements, issues of AI news anchors can actually be seen as actually promoting innovative storytelling and also promoting and engaged audiences. Because as I mentioned earlier on, journalism is more about storytelling, it's more about engaging with audiences. And I believe that when AI are actually appropriated in a certain context, such as the Zimbabwe, whilst we acknowledge issues of digital divide, AI tools can actually promote citizenship, can actually promote democracy through engaged journalism and also innovative storytelling. Thank you. I think I used my time wisely, hopefully.
Then in terms of demographics, did you take any considerations to that? Because my understanding is that perceptions at times they are linked to demographics. Let me just give a short example. I was having a conversation with someone who said they preferred a printed newspaper instead of an online newspaper because they don't believe the stuff that is posted online. So as someone who is an old school, they believe that a printed newspaper is something that they can believe and use. Then the next question, you said there is need for collaboration, sort of coming together, trainers, practicing journalists, and so forth. You had a chat with some journalism lecturers or teachers, as it were. What is their level of embracing of teaching of AI in their institutions, if any? Because I think this is important when the industry is already using it. We don't want to have a situation where institutions, training institutions are behind the industry because they feed into the industry. Trainers, actually institutions are supposed to train journalists who are already acquainted with these AI issues that you are gathered here.
Yes, as I'm saying that these are difficult questions because they are also pertinent questions that we should be asking ourselves in terms of. The first question is to do with the research, right? In terms of the methodology that I use, demographics. And then the other questions is to do with more of collaborations between journalism schools and also the industry. So I will start with the demographics question. You are asking, did I consider demographics? Yes, I did consider demographics. So in terms of research, all research work is contextual, is situated within a particular context and also informed by your participants that you are using for your particular research. So for this particular research, the interest was mainly on the views of journalism students, the views of journalists, and also the views of citizens in general. But now in terms of citizens in general, I think most of the participants, I would say, they were young people. But now young is also contextual. Let me say there were people below 50 years. I think most of the people that I interviewed, close to 50 participants who are journalism educators, who are also students. I mean, students, most of them, they're in their 20s. The journalism educators that I spoke with, they are in their 30s, are in their 40s. And the citizens in general that I spoke with from different platforms, I would say they are in their 30s and 40s. So in terms of the demographics, I would say it was dominated by young people in urban setups. Yeah, because one of the issues that we need to consider is actually people who were able to consume ALICE, right? So if you want to talk to, you want to ask people, someone's perception if that person has been exposed to ALICE and actually engaged with AI-driven context. So I think what you have said is actually pertinent, because for other participants, maybe in other setups, maybe in rural setups, in maybe those who are about 60s, 70s, maybe they'll have different perceptions on ALICE. But from my research, I would say these were the general views, especially for those I interviewed. But now for the content that I was analyzing on social media, it's difficult to actually know someone's age, because someone will be putting on a profile picture of their daughter, or maybe it's a 2-year-old, and you know that there's no way that a 2-year-old will be actually commenting on Facebook. So it's actually difficult to know some of these demographics, especially on Facebook and Twitter, where sometimes people use different names. But in terms of the people that I interviewed face-to-face, I think it was mainly young people in urban areas. Then the second question on collaborations, I think you are raising a very fundamental questions in terms of the role of journalism educators also, and how it relates with the industry. Because, like as you have said, that the journalism educators, they should not be following what is the trends that are happening in the industry. I think there should be some form of mutual collaboration, if I may put it that way. On one hand, the industry can actually be informed by what is happening in journalism schools, the kind of journalism that you are teaching. Because as a lecturer like yourself, I don't think you are teaching students for the industry, right? Maybe your bigger objective is to actually produce journalism graduates who are actually going to promote democracy, who are actually going to be involved in informing citizens, rather than just producing journalism graduates who are going to work for news industries. So in terms of collaborations, what will be fruitful will be for all these engagements. But now I think one of the challenges really is about lack of resources, journalism schools, right? I think as a journalism educator like yourself, you know about the condition in terms of the resources in some journalism schools, because in as much as you are aware, you are knowledgeable about AI, right? Like you know about AI theoretically, but now to actually equip students in terms of how they do the nitty-gritties in terms of AI news anchors, you may need resources. And sometimes some of these journalism schools, they do not have resources. So there's a need for engagement between the industries, because the industries, they need journalism schools, because if journalism schools are producing students or graduates that are not in sync with what is happening in the industry, it becomes a problem for the industry. But at the same time, the journalism schools also need the industry. So there's that relation, there's a dialectical relationship which should be always be in place. I hope I've answered your two difficult questions too.
Well, thank you so much, Prof. Any more questions that have come up? None. Okay. I have a question here from Peter D. From the program director, Namibia and Southern Africa, DW Academy. And the question is, could someone reproduce ALICE and use her to produce false news, abusing the trust that people have into CITE? And I'll allow the Prof to rest, but if you still want to respond, our innovation and research product manager, Ndlovu, wanted to take this question. Over to you, Sean.
Maybe, Peter, to answer your question, definitely, if someone is invested and has the time, knowledge, and techniques, it's very easy to manipulate ALICE and create fake news. But the only way to safeguard and to protect ourselves in Alice is, number one, like any other cases, there are many people have tried to use BBC or CNN to create fake news of these news anchors. We post it on our trusted social websites. So number one, all the content will be coming from one social website and it'll be coming from trusted sources. That's one way of trying to mitigate and push back on the issue of people trying to abuse and create a similar avatar like Alice to create fake news. It's very much possible. The tools are readily available online. And if you've got the time and you're invested, it's very much easy to do that. But to push back is that we post it on our trusted socials or trusted platforms. So that way we gain the trust of our audience. So it's not 100% safe or foolproof, but it is possible to create that. And the only way to do it is to post it or get your content from trusted sources. I think that's what I can say for now.
So I think at the center of this conversation, I've managed to also pick that to consumers, actually, in the age of AI, there is need to be somewhat vigilant. And I just wanted to find out, while we are talking about AI in the context of practicing journalism, what is it that consumers can do? Because I believe that they also need to be assisted in a way that they'll be able to accept the innovation. So what is it that consumers or what can future collaborations do to make sure that consumers are positioned in the right place to be able to accept innovation as time goes on?
We have what we call engaged journalism, where the journalism that we want is the journalism that resonate with what audiences want. It's not a one-way type of journalism. We want to produce content. At the same time, we want audiences to actually engage with that particular content. And I think digital tools are providing opportunities for that. So in terms of what can be done, I think one of the first steps, I will use CITE as an example, is the research that they've carried out, because now they've got an idea of what people are saying about AI news anchors, or AI news anchor Alice. I think what initially CITE had another Alice, right? There was another Alice and they replaced that Alice, unless if I'm wrong, I'm correct, right? Lungile and Sean. So this is the second Alice that they have. I think they actually having this new Alice in a way was informed by the comments that people were saying about that other Alice. So I think the issue that can be done is to actually be more of a listenership, like actually to take into consideration what audiences are saying, rather than force things on audiences. And that would be one of the key issues, to actually adapt, because with digital technologies, we're always adapting. So we are not I don't think CITE should be having Alice that is fixed, that is not adapting, that is not changing. So the kind of content, the kind of news, AI-driven news anchor that they can have is the one that can always be, that can always change based on the interactions, the conversations that they are having with audiences. So the news organizations should create spaces for audience to actually share their views. I think it's different from the traditional news papers that we had, where people would write a letter to the editor to raise their concern that this is my issue. But now with social media, when there's a news, AI-driven news on social media, people are able to comment and to take those comments into consideration. I think that will help in actually forging a very long-lasting mutual relationship between news organizations and audiences. Because what we need is an engaged journalism where audiences are fully participating in the news that they are receiving from industries. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Ndlovu, for responding to that question. I've just had a comment and a question coming through. Messi Manja says, very interesting and insightful presentation from Professor Ndlovu. Thank you. A very good observation made on demographics used in your research. I think the inclusion of those above 50 years in the further study would also bring in another perspective on the use of AI news anchor, Alice. And then we have a question from George. George is from Malawi. The question is, can Alice be effective in cases where speed is required? Say you want to break some news. Who's going to take that one? Sean, Senzel? Okay, Sean is going to answer. Please give him the mic. Okay.
So Alice is used for news production, and currently all the videos or information content that Alice produces or outputs is content that is being gathered by news reporters manually. So for speed and accuracy, it depends how speedy our news team on the ground can get the information so that we can upload it onto, give it to Alice so that she can create those news. So it's all still a human, there's still human work needed for us to produce, for Alice to be able to produce the content. So for fast breaking news, it all depends on how fast we get the news, how fast we verify it, and how ready is it for it to be uploaded through Alice. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Sean, for responding to that question. I'm seeing also a comment, someone saying people were proposing to Alice, that's sort of a rhetoric question, and they're saying, anyway, it's a good way of easing communication. So yeah, that's a comment on what Senzelo was saying, that some people were actually coming here at CITE to look for Alice, hoping that maybe, she would become their girlfriend or something. Yeah. But well, thank you so much, Professor Ndlovu.